Hello and welcome to this week's retrospective. The big insights this week, I validated my belief that by working with AI, one of the ways we can change the way we think is that if we need something that is very defined, we can get the AI to code it and we design the architecture. We basically say, hey, this is what I want, as long as it's very defined. I'll go into it a little bit more, but basically built a video thumbnail microservice. And interestingly, since we've pushed digitizing events live around this new proposition of this is a live experiment of what can be done with AI, I got 39 signups for a newsletter. Wasn't expecting that. So that's nice. That's very nice. Now, what we built, that microservice, here's what it does. It takes an article, summarizes it, creates a textual summary of what's in the article, uses that, combines it with the thumbnail picture, turns that into a video. So the test is you hover over the thumbnail image, it starts playing the video, and it says, hey, this article is about this, basically giving you a reason to read it. That entire production of that thumbnail is completely automated. 95% of the code, I'd make a few tweaks, but it wasn't much. The tweaks weren't actually the code. It was more about deciding what's going to happen, was done by AI. The design was mine. So what was important was to set the boundaries, saying this little program will just do this. This little program will just do this. This little program will just do this. If you mush everything up too much, you'll end up in debugging hell. If you know that this is just designed to do this, if it breaks, you know why it's broken. Interestingly, it hasn't broken yet. So, that's how good some of that code is when you're very, very focused on what it's supposed to do. I'll come on to another thing in that process, which I want to share later on. The other thing is the speed is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. Going from, right, the validation is done. People are interested in seeing the outcomes, maybe not so much listening to me witter on in these retrospectives, but seeing the outcomes of what's possible and so on. Completely flipped and realigned all the social assets and the website. It was done in a day. That would have taken weeks. And I suppose one of the benefits is I'm making all the decisions. So maybe that also cuts down on the time, but it is incredible. So the decision I've made is I've resisted going everywhere all at once. My LinkedIn channel has been activated, and I'm going to sit for the next 8 weeks with LinkedIn and YouTube and the website and get those working well before we start putting in a second layer. And the second layer will probably have to be a newsletter, but I'm just going to put that to one side. Now, here was a big learning for me. In the process of doing that coding, I think Claude got stuck. And sometimes these GPTs get really stuck in, almost like a sunk cost fallacy. They think the error is this, and they go round and round asking you to do different things, just focused on that error. What I did was I took the error and I put it into ChatGPT, who had no context of what we've been working on. I said, look, this is what's happening here. And it came back with say, I can see why it's this and this and this. I pasted that error back into Claude and it went, oh yeah, that's right. And I've done this trick a couple of times. So getting a different GPT with a different model and different training to mark the other GPT, so to speak, can really just shorten the amount of time you're spending in fixing stuff, especially in the context of building things like microservices. I've deployed this as well in some of the content workflows that I've now built just to see what happens. And it does create an improvement. So, for example, I have ChatGPT creating the initial, what I said earlier, that summary. I get Claude to mark it, say, hey, is this any good in the context of that? And it goes, no, it's not. And it comes up with something else. And then that goes through sort of 3 iterations. What I end up getting is very good. Well, put it this way, I like it. Usually the first one's a bit robotic and blah, but what you end up with is very, very good. So again, that was a big learning. One big change in the whole thing is also every piece of content we're generating. When I look at it through my eyes, or perhaps you look at it through your eyes when you read an article, you immediately make a leap and go, that is why this matters. Classic example, the video I did about thumbnails. Thumbnails was just what we were doing. It's not why we were doing it. We were doing it because, you can go and watch that video. And the GPTs just can't make that leap. They don't have domain experience or world experience or whatever that might be. So we're adding a field where we put in a very clear why. This article is talking about this, but here is why it's talking about it, because the why, you get the idea. The other thing I perhaps need to change, I am not entirely sure, is the fact that we've got those newsletter signups. A, I wasn't expecting it. And B, it is a validation. And most importantly, it's a way of connecting directly to people. I may need to really think about starting the newsletter sooner than I thought, but I don't want to start it for the sake of starting it, because it'll just be blah. It won't have enough value to it. So a lot of next week is going to be walking around the kitchen trying to figure out, how can I fast track getting a newsletter out there that is not just regurgitating nonsense. We don't need more of those kind of newsletters in the world. Next week, what I said earlier, thinking about the newsletter and actually testing that video thumbnail feature on digitizing events and see what it does. And also a big thing for next week is really starting, and this is what I want to do, is reaching out to people who have the same belief that I do, that we need to see what AI will enable in terms of meaningful work for us and how that all fits together. I've got an ambition to maybe capture some of those conversations and share them. I'm pretty tired of the conversation that's going around where, AI is going to shed a load of jobs. I think that's been evidenced to death. We know that that's going to happen. The more interesting conversation is, what is going to replace those jobs? What work is going to replace those jobs? Anyway, thank you for watching this retrospective. And thank you very much for any one of you who has signed up to the newsletter without me actually having one. It's very heartening. Thanks again.